Alright, so I've been given the privilege today to talk about none other than the boys in blue, my Vancouver Canucks, and man, it has been quite the frustrating start to the season, to say the least. I mean, I can't lie. I think I speak on behalf of every Vancouver Canucks fan when I say that, we were pretty hopeful at the start of the year. I mean, things were looking pretty good. We acquired Andrei Kuzmenko, Mikheyev. It was Bruce's second year, and we actually finished the year last year relatively well. Considering our start, we only finished 5 points outside of a playoff spot. So, with the whole theme being unfinished business and to see where we are right now, I feel like I can approach this rant in one of a couple of ways. So I feel like this year is a little bit different to years previous. Years previous, you'd have kind of one big underlying issue with the Vancouver Canucks that the media and the fans and Twitter and whatnot would just be ripping to shreds throughout the year. But I feel like this year is a little bit different. And what I mean by that is I feel like there can be something said about literally every component of this team. And, I feel like there's a problem everywhere, whether you want to talk about the management, the coaching staff, the power play with the forwards, the defense, even the goaltending. And I never thought as a Vancouver Canucks fan that I would be criticizing the goaltending, but I mean, here we are. There's also another category there for JT Miller, but we'll get to that in just a moment here. I wanted to talk first about the Vancouver Canucks and their asset management. This is one of the main reasons why the Canucks haven't really gotten over the hump of being a mediocre team. For so long, we've been stuck in this state where we haven't been good enough to be an actual contender, but we're also not bad enough to be in a state where we can actively be tanking and rebuilding whilst the fans are, actually okay with that, because we've been doing that for the past 8 or so years. It's just, we kind of rushed it and made some bad decisions along the way, especially after the bubble, which kind of set us back a couple of steps, which, is definitely not the stuff that the fans want to be hearing, but it might be the truth. And I'm for the most part talking about the moves made by Jim Benning, pretty infamous guy here in Vancouver. But yeah, when you look at some of the things that this guy did, it really just doesn't make sense from a statistical standpoint when you're managing your money and you have limited resources and you're just throwing stuff at random players who really aren't going to help us. Let's go back to the bubble when, afterwards we got knocked out by Vegas. And, there's still some pretty good hype around the Vancouver Canucks because we're thinking, okay, although we lost, it's looking pretty good for next year. We just got to sign maybe 1, 2 out of 3 of Tanev, Markstrom, and Toffoli. We ended up getting none of those guys. They all ended up going to the Flames. But I'll talk to you about how I feel the Tanev missed opportunity has hurt us the most. As, man, this guy is a top 20 defenseman in the league right now, and he's pretty cheap as well. $4.5 million for a guy that, is a right shot. And you don't really have that many good right-handed defensemen available in the market. Not to mention the fact that this guy literally wanted to play for the Vancouver Canucks for his entire career. Jim Benning said no, he slept on it, and the next day Tanner was like, yeah, you know what, I'm out. This was a guy that could have been Hughes' deal partner for the past 3 years. Could have given him so much more development, but instead we've had to juggle guys like Shen and Myers and OEL and Poolman and all these guys to play with Hughes, and it's just not worked at all, when you could have had a guy that's better than all of those guys to play with them throughout the past 3 years. So it's just so dumb there. They talked about how, we couldn't fit Tanev in for that much money, but we went on to go sign Nate Schmidt a couple of months after that for more money and more terms. So no matter how you look at it, it really just doesn't make sense there. And, he could have really helped us on our blue line there, especially with how bad it looks right now. Like, it's literally worse now than it was when we were in the playoff bubble. So I don't know what Jim Benning's decision there was, but it was not the right thing to do. Another example of poor resource management was the OEL Garland trade. Now, this got a lot of mixed feedback when it was first announced. People were excited because they thought that we were in a win now mode, and they thought that we were going to be better because of it in the short run, because we were getting rid of Louis Eriksson, Jay Beagle, and Antoine Roussel, shedding off a lot of dead weight, but then we were also gaining a very risky contract. OEL, he's at like 7 point something for like 7 years or something like that, and a lot of people were scared about that, but they're like, hey, we got Connor Garland, which is not bad. Look at that contract right now and say to me that that was a good decision. You can't, because, you had 1 more year of Louis Eriksson, Jay Beagle, and Antoine Roussel, and then we would have had so much money to spend in the market Instead, we pick up a terrible contract whilst giving up a first to do so. Keep that in mind. We gave up a first to acquire one of the worst contracts in the NHL because we thought that we were good enough. Like, had we not done that deal, we'd have a ton of money in cap space. We'd have Dylan Guenther. We wouldn't have OEL, who at the end of the day is just not a good player. We had so many better alternatives that we could have, re-signed or extended, but instead, we traded for OEL. We literally had Alex Edler, who is a carbon copy of OEL. He's probably better right now as it is. And he's on a league minimum right now with the Kings. So I don't know what to tell you there. We had Edler. The Flames were offering a first-round pick in Dylan Dubé for him. We didn't do that. We just let him walk in free agency while we were in a rebuild. So it really just goes to show you, man, so many missed opportunities. Signing Braden Holtby to $4.5 million. So it's like, come on, man. Like, we had so many chances to be good, but Jim Benning has literally just gone and not done us a service. And even now, with Jim Rutherford, we could have got John Marino for Jack Rathbone and a second-round pick, which, at first glance, that seems like a little bit much to give. But, man, put me in that spot a couple of months ago when they were offering it up, I would have done it in a heartbeat. Jack Rathbone is not that good. He's only 23 years old. John Marino's 25 years old. And we gave up a second-round pick only. We literally gave up a second-round pick to get rid of Jason Dickinson, only to get a guy like Jack Studnicka to literally fill his shoes. Man, it literally just does not make sense. The reason that we got rid of Jason Dickinson and a second was to make room for Ethan Bear. But, we could have had John Marino for a second and Jack Rathbone. And John Marino is a really highly touted defenseman right now. So it just goes to show you, man, that we could be good, but we just are not. And the problems emanate from our resource and asset management. Because at the end of the day, a hockey team is a business. You have a set amount of money that you can spend on players, and if you're not spending it effectively, there is no chance that you're going to have a good, long-term, successful hockey team. Look at the Devils and their defensive progression. They used to be pretty terrible on the back end, but, fast forward a couple of years, they got Graves 1 year, and then they got Dougie Hamilton, and then they got John Marino. While they already had Damon Severson, that is a really solid top four. I would take any one of those guys and throw them in the top two of our team because of how bad it is. The issue with us is not our defensive depth, because we have a lot of defensive pieces. The only problem is that all of our defensive players are all just bad. We have a ton of third-pair players that, on any team would be third-pair guys. But the fact is, we don't have any good defensemen, so we have to play those third-pair guys in much bigger roles. And that just doesn't work if you want to build a good team. You have guys like OEL and Myers, bottom-pair guys, playing top 4 minutes. They're playing 25 minutes a night. That doesn't work. You can't do that. We have one top 4 defenseman on our team who isn't even really a defensive defenseman in Quinn Hughes. He's a good offensive defenseman, but as a defender in his own zone, he's equivalent to a third-pair guy. So you look at this team, there are no good defenders. I just wanted to cut out there because I realized something very quickly. The Devils also have Simon Nemec and Luke Hughes in the ranks as defenders coming up in the Devils organization. So if you look at that top 6 now, it's looking like one of the best defensive cores in the league. And it's not like they did anything crazy to do it. They just slowly over time developed it. They didn't build something partially, make a couple of impulse decisions, and then just tear it down because they thought that they were better than they actually were, to try and contend for a playoff spot. They didn't do that. That's exactly what we did, and that's why our defensive core is worse than it was 3 years ago. So, man, either way you look at it, this is why we're one of the worst teams on the penalty kill. Currently, it's ranked 32nd out of 32 teams in the NHL, which is obviously not the best. But, if you look at who we have back there, it makes sense as to why we're doing so poorly on the PK. Elias Pettersson, our best goal scorer, is literally our best penalty killer, and that is a huge problem. You can't have that and expect to be a winning hockey team. It just doesn't work. Losing a ton of games early on in the season. We went 0-5 because we couldn't hold on to a lead after 2 periods. We'd go up, we'd look like a decent team, and then we would just completely shut off. And that's just a combination of things, man. I don't even know what's going on. JT Miller just giving away the puck, and then Demko just not even trying on the back end. That's what I want to talk about next, which is Thatcher Demko. This year, he's looking like Jack Campbell out there. Sorry, Jack Campbell, but you're also terrible. But yeah, man, Demko, out of like the 10 or whatever games he's played, I think he's only won 1 game. And in not 1 game has he let in less than 2 goals. So in every game he has started, more than 2 have gone in, which is just not what you want to be seeing out of a guy that's supposed to be one of your key pieces. And man, it's really been affecting us. A lot of people are saying, imagine if we didn't have Demko in net last season. Imagine how bad we would be. Well, I think we're seeing that happen right before our eyes as this season is slowly unfolding, just not the way that we wanted to, as man, Thatcher Demko has been just complete Swiss cheese. So we'll see what happens there. But man, if we do want to get back in this race, which I don't know if it's going to happen at this point. Now let's talk a little bit about JT Miller. JT Miller, the $8 million man, which keep in mind, that contract has not even started yet. Yes, guys, this year we are still paying him on his team-friendly, like, $5.5 million deal. And yeah, he's not going to be getting paid $8 million till next year. So everything that we're seeing is still part of his old contract. If that's not an indicator that we should have traded this guy when we had the chance, I don't know what is. Because, man, I'll tell you, the New York Rangers were literally knocking on our door with a pretty decent offer of a first-round pick, Philip Sheetal, and Nils Lundqvist. And we decided, nope, we're going to pass on that. And we're going to sign up to $8 million by 7 years with a no-trade clause. What are we thinking? And that's not even Jim Benning's doing. That was Alvin and Jim Rutherford. What, like, it doesn't make any sense, man. Why would you sign this guy to a $8 million contract after one of the most fluky 99-point seasons I have ever seen? Like, I mean, of course he was going to get that many points. He was playing in literally every big situation the Vancouver Canucks had to offer. On every power play, he would stay past the first unit, and he would stay with the second unit. You know, he would be on for the PK. He'd be playing 20-plus minutes a night. He'd be playing in overtime. I mean, he's playing with good players, too. Elias Pettersson on his wing, Brock Besser. He'd be playing sometimes on the wing with Bo Horvat centering him. I mean, of course he was going to get a lot of points playing with these guys, just passing them the puck. And, you know, every so often he'd get a shot on net. It would go in. So, man, like, I don't know what to tell you, man. It was just written in the stars that this was going to happen. And now we're stuck with him for 7 more years after this one. And we don't even know how bad this is going to age. Because already, man, with this guy's work ethic, it really isn't worth it at all. And we've seen it on display. I don't know what it's going to look like when he's like 34 and just, you know, dying out there on the ice after a 30-second shift. So we'll see, man. Horvat now is popping off. He's already got like 13 goals on the year, second in the NHL, behind Connor McDavid. And we're screwed because we're not going to be able to sign him. So, yeah, we'll see how that turns out. But, man, it's just a complete fire we are witnessing before us. And I don't know how it got this bad this fast after the bubble. But, man, just a lot of missed opportunities, a lot of stupid things that we tried to do, which didn't end up working out in our favor. And it just made us even worse in the end. We haven't really progressed with our contracts. Like, we pick up dead weight all the time, and we're continuing to do so with our latest acquisition in JT Miller there. So it just doesn't seem to end, and I don't know how long we're going to be stuck in the cycle of mediocrity for, because the Canucks are just, you know, not a good team, and it's really affecting our players on a day-to-day level. Like, on paper, we have a pretty decent roster, but with the amount of criticism we get, with the media, and all this fire and backlash we're receiving, the Canucks are always under investigation for, you know, having team controversy and, you know, there being, you know, internal drama within, you know, the coaching staff or the players, people not agreeing with certain things. And it's just really hard to deal with all that stuff. I'm not saying I feel bad for the players because they haven't been playing good, but at the same time, that is really hard to deal with, and it does affect them on a personal level. So, man, if you're a Vancouver Canucks fan, try not to, you know, send any, like, personalized hate messages to the players, because all that's really doing is, you know, lowering their self-confidence out there on the ice. But it just seems like every year this team just continues to disappoint me on just a whole nother level, really, and it's just so degrading to the point where this team will lose, you know, a disastrous effort, and I will just realize that I've just wasted like 2.5 hours of my life just cheering for just completely nothing. I mean, we'll see how much more of this I can take, but I mean, I'll forever stick by the club, I guess, because, they're my boys, but it's just tough to see this happen. Thank you, John, so much for having me on the channel. I really appreciate it. Yeah, make sure you guys subscribe to Hot Take Hockey, get him to 50K subs, and yeah, man, subscribe to your boy, Junior C right here, and we'll get to 4K subs as soon as possible. So, yeah, man, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it. And, yeah, we'll see what happens.